It all started on the rooftop terrace of a beautiful, ivy-covered old hotel in downtown Austin, where the lights from passing cars shimmered like tiny beacons against the early evening sky, and where I first realized that ordinary gatherings can take unexpected turns. I saw Jason standing by the ornate railing, his posture relaxed yet somehow tense, like he carried a storm beneath his cool exterior. The instant our eyes met, I felt a spark of recognition, a jolt that told me tonight would unravel in ways I couldn't predict or control, no matter how calm the setting appeared on the surface. Our plan had been to attend a simple housewarming party for a mutual friend, but life had bigger surprises in store for both of us. I was 28 years old, a freelance graphic designer still scrambling for stable gigs, while Jason, at 35, boasted a marketing job that afforded him weekend getaways and a comfortable lifestyle. Despite the age gap, we had connected months ago in an online LGBTQ+ meetup group, mostly exchanging jokes about local bars and sharing memes that only made sense if you had grown up in our scattered corner of Texas. Neither of us thought our bond extended beyond friendly conversation, yet we discovered we had more in common than we originally guessed, from our love of indie music to our shared dream of exploring Europe. When we each received an invitation to this rooftop housewarming party at a historic hotel, converted into condo lofts for creative professionals, we agreed to meet in person, half expecting to chat casually and then wander the scene without much fanfare. The party's location turned out to be unexpectedly dazzling. Lush vines cascaded down old brick walls, while strings of fairy lights glowed between potted cacti and lanterns. A row of vintage arcade machines lined the far wall, their neon screens flickering with retro games that drew curious onlookers. Our friend, Angela, had begged the building manager to allow a roof celebration, assuring everyone that the high vantage and old-world charm would add a special touch. People mingled with plastic cups of sangria, and the music, a laid-back mix of acoustic guitar and smooth electronic beats, drifted through the balmy air. It was clear that, for many attendees, this was a chance to flaunt eccentric outfits and exchange Instagram handles. But for me, it became the stage for something I never saw coming. Although we greeted each other with casual hugs and polite laughter, I sensed an undercurrent of awareness I couldn't explain. Jason wore a simple black t-shirt that emphasized the shape of his arms, while I showed up in light jeans and a navy polo, feeling underdressed but oddly comfortable. We toured the rooftop, clinking plastic cups when someone offered complimentary drinks, and talked about the week's ups and downs. I hinted that I needed a break from an endless design project, and Jason teased me for letting stress steal my sleep. Throughout these exchanges, our gazes locked longer than necessary, filling the intervals of silence with subtle tension neither of us openly acknowledged. After a short while, Angela swept in, introducing us to new faces and recounting childhood stories, but Jason and I inevitably circled back to each other, leaning on the railing to admire the skyline as the sun dipped below the horizon. The moment was peaceful, until Jason took a full swig of his beer and admitted he was feeling braver tonight. I didn't probe too deeply, suspecting that the social lubricant of alcohol gave him courage to relax in ways he might not typically allow. Still, beneath his casual smirk, I noticed a hint of vulnerability, like he was harboring questions he might be too hesitant to ask outright. We drifted through the crowd, bumping into dancers, weaving past couples who swayed to the quiet beat, and eventually found ourselves posted by a table of fruit platters and half-empty bottles. The conversation meandered from friendly banter about local restaurants to more personal subjects, like how lonely modern life could be, even for people with hundreds of online followers. A faint flush on Jason's cheeks suggested the alcohol was creeping up on him, but he simply shrugged and laughed, leaning closer to say something that never fully formed on his lips. I felt an odd pang in my chest, a mix of curiosity and anticipation, wondering if he was on the verge of confessing something I wasn't entirely sure I was ready to hear. As the party's volume rose, a DJ started spinning retro pop tracks, adding a pulsing energy that made people cheer and dance. Jason's mood seemed to shift from subdued caution to gleeful spontaneity, and I watched as he finished another drink, swaying to the music in a way that exuded confidence and playful mischief. Then, in a moment that felt surreal, he turned to me, his eyes glowing with a mix of excitement and longing, and I realized that this laid-back night could transform in a heartbeat into something deeply personal, something neither of us could ignore. Little did I know, that spark of possibility would set in motion the events that would ultimately bring us closer than either of us had ever anticipated. The rooftop's atmosphere grew electric as more guests arrived, each person adding their own voice and restless energy to a night that felt full of promise and tension, causing Jason to drift closer to me in a way that made my heart pound. He was already nursing another drink, eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and nerves, and I wondered how much of his confident smile was genuine and how much was influenced by the relaxing effect of alcohol. The music changed from a gentle acoustic set to more upbeat sounds, drawing small groups to dance beneath the glow of hanging lanterns, while a handful of people milled around the old brick chimney, laughing and sipping from plastic cups. I noticed Jason glancing my way with greater frequency, as if he had something important to say but couldn't gather the courage. Eventually, he guided me toward a quiet corner where potted plants shielded us from the crowd. Hey, thanks for watching until this point. Please leave a comment if you're enjoying the video. It really helps us grow the channel and reach more people. And hey, thank you very much. Let's get back to story. And when we stopped, he rested his hand on my shoulder with an air of hesitation that hinted at deeper feelings. I felt a shiver of awareness ripple through me because his expression, usually lighthearted, held a level of vulnerability I had never seen before. He cleared his throat, muttered something about how the night made him bold, then admitted that he had been thinking about me in ways he couldn't easily ignore. My stomach twisted in anticipation, and I found myself gripping the rim of my cup just to keep my composure, even as my thoughts tumbled between surprise and excitement. The subtle flush on his cheeks betrayed a mix of fear and hope that spoke directly to my own tangled emotions. I wanted to respond, to set the record straight about whatever tension lay between us, but found my words faltering when Jason leaned in with a quiet laugh that sounded equally relieved and terrified. Our shoulders touched as we stood there, momentarily blocking out the music and chatter around us, creating a small, charged bubble of possibility that dared us to step beyond our usual dynamic. He confessed that while alcohol might have loosened his tongue, he also believed the connection was real, having felt it simmer during late-night chats and teasing banter we once passed off as harmless fun. I sensed my heartbeat echoing in my ears as I placed a tentative hand on his arm, amazed at how natural this felt and how desperately I wanted to see where it might lead. It took only a slight tilt of his head to bring his cheek near mine, an almost accidental brush of skin that left both of us trembling, uncertain if we were ready to take a bigger leap. I allowed myself to savor that moment, the faint hint of cologne mingling with the cool rooftop air, and I whispered that I had been ignoring a quiet pull toward him for longer than I cared to admit. He exhaled shakily, looking both relieved and emboldened, and he slipped a hand to my waist, pulling me just close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body through our clothes. Time slowed, and for those few seconds, every sound beyond our little corner faded to a soft drone, leaving only the thrill of realizing our friendship had tilted into new territory. Before we could test the boundaries of that closeness any further, a burst of laughter from behind us snapped our focus back to the larger party, where a group of friends beckoned Jason to join a loud toast. He grinned apologetically, stepping back yet still linking his fingers in mine for a brief moment, as though he couldn't bear to let go entirely. My mind whirled with questions about what came next, but a bubbly voice shouted both our names, and we realized we had to rejoin the crowd. We exchanged a look that promised more, a silent understanding that returning to normal conversation would feel oddly forced now that we had laid bare the first spark of what we truly felt. With my pulse racing and his hand still lingering at my side, we made our way back into the throng of dancing bodies, carrying our secret forward into the unpredictable night. The party gathered momentum as the music grew louder, and Jason plunged back into the crowd, dancing with enough energy to draw curious stares. Yet he kept glancing my way as if waiting for me to follow. I hovered near a table where plastic cups and mismatched bottles were strewn about, feeling my heart slam against my ribs, still reeling from the charged moment we had shared minutes before. Angela waved me over, but I couldn't bring myself to join her circle of laughing friends. Not when every instinct urged me to keep my eyes on Jason's fluid movements and the half-smile on his face that hinted at deeper intentions. Eventually, he beckoned me closer, and I found myself winding through clusters of people who cheered at every beat drop, stepping around couples locked in their own little worlds. My head swam with anticipation, an exhilarating mixture of joy and fear, because I sensed we were teetering on the edge of something momentous, and neither of us was fully in control. The instant I reached him, he slipped an arm around my waist, guiding me into a slow sway that contrasted with the fast-paced music, creating an oddly intimate bubble in the midst of flashing lights and carefree dancers. I felt a spark race along my skin where his fingers pressed, the heat of his body leaving me breathless. We danced like that for several minutes, communicating through subtle shifts in our posture, through the friction of his thigh brushing mine, until the noise and movement around us became too intense. With a quick tilt of his head, Jason indicated he wanted to find a quieter spot, and I didn't hesitate before following him off the makeshift dance floor. He led me down a narrow hallway near the rooftop's edge, where faded murals decorated the walls and half-dead succulents lined the windowsill in cracked terracotta pots. The reverberating bass from the party lingered, but it felt subdued here, allowing us to hear our uneven breathing and the flutter of nerves in our throats. Pausing by a door propped open to let in fresh air, Jason turned to me, brushing back a stray curl from my forehead with a trembling hand, and in his eyes I saw a question. Was I ready to make this transition from a playful connection to something far more real? He leaned closer, his breath carrying traces of sweet alcohol, and my entire body buzzed with an urgent awareness that our friendship had irrevocably shifted. I rested my hand on his shoulder, murmuring that we might regret letting emotions run wild if we didn't take a moment to be sure. But he gave a soft laugh, admitting he'd waited too long to confess his interest. His fingers slipped under the hem of my shirt, meeting my warm skin, and I released a shuddering exhale at the contact, stunned by how natural it felt to accept his touch. The next moment arrived like a surge of gravity, pulling us together in a kiss fueled by pent-up confessions and the dizzy pulse of distant music. Our lips collided, tentative at first, then deepening when Jason's hand moved to cup the back of my neck, guiding me closer until I no longer registered the hallway's dim lights or the faint echo of conversation outside. My palms explored the shape of his arms, feeling the tension in his muscles as if every part of him responded to the intensity flooding between us. Each shift in position brought new warmth, a reminder that the bond we once treated as friendly banter had taken on a far more urgent tone. When we finally broke apart, gasping softly in the hush of this secluded corner, I saw the conflicted joy in Jason's eyes, reflecting everything I felt in that moment. Relief at discovering something genuine, coupled with the trembling knowledge that we stood on uncertain ground. He asked if we should return to the crowd, but his voice shook, betraying his hope that we might find a more private space to talk, or perhaps to continue what we had started. I suggested we catch our breath and regroup, maybe locate a calm spot where we wouldn't be interrupted by a dozen partygoers stumbling past. Jason nodded, his gaze never leaving mine, his hand still circling gently at my waist in a way that sent sparks up my spine. A distant whoop of laughter from the main terrace reached our ears, and we both grinned, realizing that the festivities carried on without us, oblivious to our small drama unfolding in the shadows. Yet, neither of us felt much desire to rejoin that scene, at least not right away. We let the music's thumping vibrations serve as a reminder that time was moving forward and that decisions had to be made. Holding hands with a pressure that conveyed both excitement and fear, we turned toward the darkened stairwell, intending to slip downstairs before anyone noticed we were missing. We had no plan beyond that moment, but the thrill of forging into uncharted territory together ignited our thoughts, promising that what lay ahead would test us in ways we couldn't have anticipated just a few hours earlier. We slipped away from the pulsing crowd of dancers just as the music reached another fever pitch, ducking down a quiet hallway that led toward a secondary stairwell, our hands linked in an unspoken promise to figure out whatever was happening between us. My breath still felt unsteady, and I noticed Jason's chest rising and falling faster than usual, as though he, too, was bracing for something far more meaningful than a fleeting rooftop flirtation. The corridor was lined with scuffed paintings and old event posters, their corners curled by the humidity of summer nights, and that mundane detail made the moment feel strangely real, a reminder we were not wandering a dream but rather stepping into a new reality where we were both vulnerable. Midway down the hall, Jason paused, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one was watching, then guided me through a heavy metal door that led to the building's side stairwell. A single overhead light flickered intermittently, casting our shadows in shifting shapes across the concrete steps. The dull thump of the party's bass vibrated through the walls, yet it sounded distant enough that we could finally hear each other's shaky exhales. Jason leaned against the cool metal railing, taking a moment to steady himself, his gaze flickering between me and the door, as if he feared someone might burst in and interrupt what we were about to say or do. He let out a soft, half-nervous laugh, admitting he'd never imagined confronting such intense feelings in a place that smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and old paint. I couldn't help but grin at the irony, because I had spent countless hours picturing how our first honest talk about deeper affection might unfold. Maybe in a cozy cafe or on a stroll through a quiet park, but never in a hidden corner of a raucous rooftop party. Without hesitation, I set my hand on his chest, feeling the rapid thud of his heartbeat beneath his slightly wrinkled shirt. The touch made my own pulse spike, a shared reminder that neither of us could conceal how badly we wanted this, no matter how unexpected it felt. We stood like that for a moment, letting the silence speak louder than any rushed confession could. Eventually, Jason covered my hand with his, fingertips curling around my knuckles in a gesture of reassurance and longing that caused a slight flutter in my stomach. He admitted that the brief kiss we'd shared earlier hadn't been enough to calm the fire that had been simmering ever since we first connected online. I inhaled a shaky breath, admitting I felt the same desire, laced with trepidation because we had slid from friendship into something far more complicated in the span of a single night. Yet, despite the whirlwind quality of it all, I couldn't deny the electric charge coursing through me whenever our bodies drew close. His next move surprised me. He stepped forward until only inches separated us, then eased his free arm around my waist, letting our torsos align so I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. The contact felt so natural that a slight laugh escaped my lips, partly from relief that I wasn't standing there alone with my hopes dangling in the air. We exchanged a few soft, unhurried kisses, mindful that we were in a semi-public space, yet unable to resist the magnetic pull drawing us together. Each gentle press of our lips felt like a private confession, a way of saying all the thoughts swirling in our heads without stumbling over them aloud. After a few more moments of trading breathless smiles, we pulled back, aware of the faint echo of voices drifting in from the hallway outside. I asked if he thought we should return to the party before someone started wondering if we had both vanished for good, and he let out a long exhale, as if waking from a fragile dream. He admitted that while part of him wanted to stay hidden in the stairwell, exploring every new spark between us away from watchful eyes, he also didn't want to give the impression that we had something to hide. I recognized the wisdom in his words, because no matter how thrilling secret moments could be, neither of us wanted to treat this connection like a guilty secret rather than the genuine beginning it appeared to be. Still holding hands, we eased ourselves onto the top step to sit for a moment, letting the tension seep out of our muscles. The overhead light flickered again, creating an odd strobe effect that made us laugh at the sheer absurdity of the scene. Two people sharing a life-changing conversation in a dingy stairwell, while a full-blown party raged only a few feet above. Jason brushed his thumb over mine and whispered that he worried real life wouldn't feel the same once we left this building, that maybe the enchantment of the rooftop evening could fade come morning. My chest tightened at his honesty, and I leaned my head against his shoulder, confessing I had wondered the same. We sat there quietly, exchanging reassurances that the connection we had sparked didn't have to evaporate with the final note of the DJ's music, agreeing in hushed tones to figure out together how to let it grow beyond one chaotic night. When a muffled cheer echoed from beyond the door, I realized the party might soon wind down, and we needed to decide whether to slip back in or part ways. With a shared look, we rose to our feet, smoothing our clothes and trying to banish the telltale flush from our faces. Jason laced his fingers through mine once more, murmuring that he wanted people to see us together, even if it meant a few curious stares. The words made my heart turn over in my chest. Squeezing his hand in silent agreement, I took a final glance at the flickering light overhead, picturing this little concrete landing that had, in its own way, changed everything. Then, we pulled open the metal door, stepping back into the lively corridor that still thrummed with the lingering remnants of music and laughter. Even though we returned to the same rooftop, I couldn't shake the sense that we had become different versions of ourselves. Two men no longer content with half-truths or polite distance, emerging from the shadows with a quiet resolve that our bond, however new, was worth testing against whatever awaited us under the glow of party lights. When we emerged back onto the rooftop, the party had reached a rowdy peak, with a new round of drinks circulating and people laughing at jokes that would soon be forgotten in the haze of the next morning. Jason guided me through the crowd, keeping a gentle hand on my arm or brushing my fingers whenever we caught a break in the throng of dancers, as if he needed constant reassurance that our moment in the stairwell wasn't just a passing dream. Angela rushed over, giggling and slurring a bit, eager to share some half-remembered story, but her words trailed off the instant she saw us standing closer than before, exchanging looks that no longer felt purely friendly. She shot me a knowing smile, then teased Jason for vanishing earlier, warning him that she had nearly started a search party. He shrugged off her questions with a playful grin, yet I noticed the flash of genuine contentment in his eyes that signaled something deeper than a casual fling. People swirled around us, oblivious to the undercurrent tying Jason and me together now, and each time his shoulder grazed mine, I felt that quiet pulse of promise. Eventually, we found a deserted corner near the string lights, sipping water instead of more beer, talking in hushed tones about how this night had unexpectedly tipped from safe camaraderie to open affection. Jason admitted he had been aching for a chance to show me how he truly felt, but never found the right time or courage. I confessed my own mix of relief and nerves, confiding that I feared we were barreling into something complicated yet impossible to resist. He responded by lacing our fingers, whispering we could figure out the details together, no matter how clumsy or sudden it seemed. Beneath the glow of flickering bulbs and drifting chatter, we silently agreed that while friendship had led us this far, we were now stepping into brand new territory, uncertain but united in a shared leap of faith. As the party began winding down and guests started yawning, we walked together toward the elevator that led down from the rooftop, our shoulders bumping lightly in a way that felt comforting rather than awkward. The music faded behind us, replaced by the softer hum of building maintenance staff tidying empty bottles, and I realized that in a few short hours, everything between us had changed. Jason asked if I wanted to grab late-night food somewhere quiet, and I caught the hopeful glint in his eyes that dared me to say yes. There, in the muted glow of the hallway, I nodded, my heart skipping a beat at the prospect of spending time outside the chaotic energy of a party we had nearly forgotten. Once downstairs, we found a small cafe still open, nearly deserted except for a few night owls hunched over steaming drinks. We chose a corner booth, settling across from each other, talking in low voices about what we both really wanted now that the spark of passion had turned genuine. Jason admitted that being with me in the stairwell and feeling the rush of that first true kiss had stirred something deeper, a longing to share more than fleeting excitement. I admitted that I felt the same, surprised by my own openness after so many months of dancing around our attraction. Our conversation shifted naturally to the idea of sex, not just as a distant concept but as something we might share one day, although we both agreed we wanted to be mindful and take our time rather than rush blindly into the physical realm. We left the cafe just before dawn, stepping onto the deserted sidewalk with a bag of leftovers and a reluctant awareness that we should head home to sleep. Under the faint glow of flickering street lamps, we exchanged a final tender kiss, the kind that said our new closeness wasn't merely a party-fueled spark but a real flame worth tending. We lingered, hands clasped, allowing the quiet street to witness our promise that this was only the beginning of whatever we might become. Jason softly brushed his thumb over my knuckles, whispering that he couldn't wait to see me again. I squeezed his hand in return, a rush of warmth coursing through my chest at the thought of a fresh start in a world that had once seemed so ordinary. In that moment, I understood that our bond, born out of chance and fueled by an unexpected party, had formed something stronger than either of us could have anticipated. A new story just waiting to unfold.